There has never been a man who has ever walked the earth known by the name Jesus Christ. But today we know that millions of people have been deceived. The writer John Bell in his book gives us the quote that was made by Pope Leo X, who said that they knew what a profitable superstition the fable of Christ has been for them. But I want to say, don't trust me. Don't trust what I say. I could also be deceiving you. All you have to do to discover the truth is to learn to follow our discussions thoroughly and thoughtfully, and then do your own independent, open-minded research. And then when you realize that we offer an inherent Afro-Salvation mystic power via our Bantu Melanin University, then you can access the in-depth programs, practical tools, and expert partnerships, and you will be ready to start on this journey. You can visit our website. You can also send us an email, which we are showing on this page, and also which is shown in the descriptions. So this is a matter of life and death. Pope Leo knew what he was saying, and that is validated in the Bible, a book billions of Christians have read, will continue to read, believe, and they will hear sermons, and they will still will not get the fact that we are going to share today. How is that possible? Because there is a spirit stupor which is at work, which is conjured by those who founded Christianity and marketed it. The people that founded Christianity were not dry. They were spiritually filled with a certain power. And although this power wanes across ages, it is always renewed by what they do. So the number one truth about Jesus that many people don't know is in the book of Hebrews, which does not merely hint at contradictions. It obliterates the modern Christian dogma surrounding Jesus' divinity and the Trinity. We want to dissect this mercilessly. We want to show proof verses in this book, as well as highlighting that there are many other proof texts in many books of the Bible that proves the point about Jesus that many people do not know. It is important that we continue to look at this topic by focusing on about 10 facts or facts. The Trinity is a lie. The book of Hebrews refutes co-eternality. God anointed Jesus, which means Jesus was not God. Jesus was made lower than the angels. Jesus was perfected by suffering. Salvation from Jesus is by faith over works. And then we have a conclusion where we look at delusion. And then we look at what Dr. Arias knew, the messianic seed of David, and the purpose or the church fathers caught red-handed. And then you can learn how to transform your own research and studies into practical, foundational understanding and philosophy. So the number one truth about Jesus many people do not know is that the issue of Jesus having a name that is greater than others isn't a metaphor. It is a declaration. Jesus is made. Not eternal, not co-equal, made. If the Trinity is true, if the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are all co-eternal and co-equal, this verse in Hebrews chapter 1 verse 5 would never write the way it is written. Yet here it stands, unapologetic. The author doesn't say was or has always been. He says was made, or that verb destroyed the Trinity. It reduces the myth of eternal sonship to a pile of ash. Then comes Hebrews 1 verse 5. Thou art my son, this day I have begotten thee. This is interesting indeed, because when it says, this day I have begotten you, eternality vanishes. Because a day exists in time and in space, and implies beginning and also implies ending. So it's non-existent, so it doesn't work. This line screams of adoptionism. The idea that Jesus became the Son at a point in time, likely at his baptism, as we read in the New Testament, in Mark's Gospel. And then Matthew and Luke invented the virgin birth, and also the book of Hebrews preserves the original heresy that Jesus was begotten and that God became his father. Number 2 fact here is that Jesus was anointed by his God, which means he wasn't God. Who anoints God? No one. So why does Hebrews say God anointed Jesus? If you read Hebrews 1 verse 9, it reads, thou hast loved righteousness, therefore God, even thy God, has anointed thee. So you anoint that who is lower than you. You don't anoint your equal. You don't anoint the one who is above. Either the book of Hebrews is confused or the Trinity is confused. The phrase that thy God clearly indicates that Jesus has a God above him. Is not metaphorical. It's a direct statement about Jesus' relationship with a higher divine being. When you also look at the word God in this verse, you have to know that it refers to Yahweh. And you know that Yahweh was a Canaanite deity adopted by Israel as theirs, as they shaped their own theology. The book of Hebrews was written to a Jewish community who were familiar with the Old Testament, and for them, God would mean Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, a tribal deity, a war god. And it is very, very important that we realize these facts. And it then brings us to the issue of divine contradictions. If you look at Hebrews 1 verse 4 and Hebrews 2 verse 9, it proves that Jesus was made lower than the angels and at the same time raised higher than the angels. So it's a contradiction unless you see the pattern somewhere that a lot of us cannot see. Jesus was created by humans and assigned a powerful heavenly origin, a top-tier angelic figure. Then they downgraded that entity to fit a new role of divine agency, a man-made messianic mediator. So modern Christians slap a label like incarnation on it and keep it at that level. But let's be real, it's just polished nonsense. A metaphysical shell dressed up in doctrinal robes. Hebrews doesn't say God became flesh. It says God was made lower than the angels. It says he was made lower than angels, a demotion, not a disguise. So that's what a lot do not understand. The truth about Jesus, many people do not know, is that the church fathers wrote these narratives and they made the narratives to say that Jesus was perfected through suffering. Though he were a son, yet learned he obedience by the things which he suffered. Hebrews 5:8. Perfection is not inherent. It is achieved. Jesus learned. Jesus became obedient. That means he could have disobeyed. That means he was not omniscient. That means he was not omnipotent or morally infallible. That's why he was tested and tried. Why would you test something that will never fail? This is not the behavior of any God incarnate. This is the development of a flawed being. And if God cannot be tempted, as James 1:13 says, yet Jesus was tempted many times, as in Hebrews 2:18, then Jesus is not God. This is what many people, many Christians do not know. Billions do not know or think about this. Is hazy. That any deity that grows and struggles is not a divine deity, but a human-made deity. We call it Mondoro in our language. So salvation, is it by works or by faith? Is it once saved, always saved? Or you can lose your salvation? There is a contradiction in the book of Hebrews, because the text itself preserves a lot of evidence that there was a lot of indecision made at that time, because something was still forming. Their theology was still in the formative stage. There was no coherent Bible. There was no coherent doctrine. There was only desperate attempts to patch together a salvific system from contradictory ideas that were floating all over the earth in that space of time at that time. Now, let's get this straight. The book of Hebrews is supposed to be the exhibit A for Jesus being God. When you read Hebrews 1 verse 8, does it say Jesus is God in reality? But it never says so. Not one time. Instead, it calls him a being made lower than angels, perfected through suffering, and with a God above him. If you read Hebrews 1 verse 8 out of context, you can interpret it by the way you want, that he is God. In any case, during that time, kings and others were taught and thought to be gods. Even Jesus said to people they were gods, if you read John 10. So it's not a problem. Anyone who worships this deity is lost in terms of understanding Christianity. The book of Hebrews will cause you to stop worshiping Jesus if you read it with a clear mind, because the book of Hebrews makes it clear that Jesus was made not eternal, that Jesus is a God above him, that Jesus was perfected through suffering, meaning he was imperfect. Jesus was tempted, implying moral capacity to fail. Jesus was also adopted, not born divine. Worshipping such a being is idolatry. There is no two ways about it. You can never escape that. If you worship Jesus today, you are an idolater. You are committing idolatry as per the Bible itself. We are not even going outside of the Bible. We are sticking with the Bible. So let's also talk about Dr. Arias, a guy who was actually there at Nicaea, the first Nicaea Council. He didn't mince his words. He didn't mince his words. He said Jesus was a creature made in time and not equal to the Father. And guess what? Council condemned him. So they had to sit down at a council, the First Ecumenical Council, 325 AD, in Turkey there, who voted in an election and a campaign that Jesus is God. So Arias had said, the Son is begotten and not eternal. He is not unbegotten. He is a thing made, a creature nonetheless. He knew the story of Serapis. He was not a fool, because Dr. Arias came from Africa here, Alexandria here. So he knew these stories of how Serapis was created and adopted by the Greco-Romans before Nicene. He said he is a creature begotten by the will of the Father, not by necessity of being, but by divine choice. And by adoption, he is called the Son. So at the First Council of Nicaea, in 325 AD, church leaders officially defined Jesus as fully divine, co-eternal, and co-substantial. So they are saying Serapis is God. That's what they're saying in technicality. So the church fathers did not discover divine truth. In the book of Hebrews, we can see how they engineered it. It wasn't revelation, it was syncretism disguised as revelation. And when critics pointed out these similarities with the pagan mystery religions and deities, the church fathers didn't even deny that. Instead, they blamed Satan the devil for plagiarizing their theology in advance. Think about this statement. Review this video seriously if you are a Christian. Justin Mitre, 160 Common Era, said, when they say that Dionysius arose again and ascended into heaven, the devil has imitated this in case of Antinonius, a deified lover of Emperor Hadrian, or else Persephone, and they crucified Dionysius. Read that. It's in the books. He literally is claiming that Satan predicted Christianity and planted false copies ahead of time to confuse people. That's what he's saying. Another one, Tertullian, 200 CEE, before Nicene, said the devil, mimicking even the resurrection, brought forth many examples of pretended resurrections. So, of everything that you have been taught about Jesus, the number one truth is that the book of Hebrews does not merely hint at contradictions, it obliterates the modern Christian dogma surrounding Jesus' divinity and the Trinity. As you discover these truths about Jesus, that many preachers are still lying today about it, it is time we separate ourselves from Babylon and from lies. So, you can go ahead. It's your choice to keep preaching the Trinity, to keep worshiping Jesus, to keep reciting the creeds. But you must know this, the Bible itself specifically calls people that worship idols, idolaters, and such people, if they are exposed to the truth, they will remain in ignorance. Because if you read the book of Hebrews, you still think that Jesus is God, because you have been programmed and you have been brainwashed to think thus. You need to transform your life. You need to transform your thinking. You need to transform your studies. And you have to enroll into Bantu Mellon University today to access in-depth programs, practical tools, and expert partnerships. You should start today. Visit our website and send us an email so we can discuss these matters together. Yes, Pope Leo X knew what he was saying. We have in this video validated some of the few facts that the Bible, the book of Hebrews, says. There are so many verses, and yet billions will not understand the simple things that we have put forward today. They will hear sermon, and they will hear sermons. They will have time to think, but they will fall back into deception. As for you, if you are called by ancestors, you will be sustained by the gods, and you will remain on track and on the route to unveil the achievements and cultural heritage of our greatest civilization. You have to desire to unlock Afro Spiritual Masterclass. Get in touch with us so that you can unlock exclusive wisdom. Subscribe, turn on the notification button, like our videos, comment, share, and let us walk this journey together. I am a manager Toby, Priest Rabbi LM Kunukenim Jakanja, saying, do not be deceived. The number one fact in the book of Hebrews is that Jesus is not God. And Jesus was man-made. It's not eternal. Didn't die for your sins. Think about that, because you have been called by your ancestors to be sustained by the gods forever and forever into the afterlife. Amen.